My name is Mia, I'm 27 years old, and I live in a freezing, unfinished attic on the edge of Chicago. The notification popped up on my phone screen at 11:30 p.m. It was a video attachment from my father. There was no text with it, just the file. I sat up in my freezing living room, rubbing my tired eyes. I had just finished another double shift. I thought maybe it was a mistake, or maybe, for once, he was sending me a nice video to say thank you for the money I sent yesterday. I pressed play. The screen was dark, like the phone had been placed face down on a table, but the audio was crystal clear. I heard the clink of expensive wine glasses. Then I heard my father's voice. He wasn't yelling. He was laughing. "Mia thinks she's buying a seat at this table," he said, his voice thick with amusement. "She's just a glorified servant paying off a dead business." Next to him, I heard my sister Shelby let out a cruel, high-pitched giggle. "I know, right? It's so easy," she said. The video ended. I sat there in the silence of my cold apartment. My hands started to shake. For 5 years, I had sacrificed everything to save them. I thought I was a good daughter. But in 10 seconds, the truth shattered my world. I wasn't family. I was just the help. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Mia, I'm 27 years old. I put the phone down on the crate I used as a nightstand. The screen went black, but the image of my father laughing was burned into my retinas. I looked around my apartment. I call it a loft, but that's just a nice word for an unfinished attic in a drafty industrial building on the edge of Chicago. It was the middle of December. The wind outside was howling, rattling the single-pane window that didn't close all the way. I could see my breath in the air. I was wearing 2 pairs of sweatpants and 3 hoodies. I slept in a beanie hat because if I didn't, my ears would ache from the cold by morning. I had a heater, a small electric one, but I only turned it on for 20 minutes in the morning while I got dressed. Electricity cost money, and I didn't have money for heat. I had money for my father. I sat on the edge of my mattress. It was on the floor because I couldn't afford a bed frame. I looked at my hands. They were dry, cracked, and red. My knuckles were swollen. I worked as a sous chef in a high-volume diner during the day, and at night, I stocked shelves at a warehouse. I worked 18 hours a day, 6 days a week. My life was a simple, brutal loop. Wake up, shiver, go to work, cook until my arms felt like lead, run to the second job, lift heavy boxes until my back screamed, come home. Eat instant noodles or leftovers from the diner. Sleep for 5 hours, repeat. I did this for one reason. The loan. 5 years ago, my father made a bad business deal. He tried to open a second location for his restaurant, The Hearth. He leveraged everything. The house, his savings, his retirement. It failed in 6 months. The bank was coming for the family home. My mother cried every day. Shelby, who was only 17 then, screamed that she couldn't lose her room. So I stepped up. I was 22. I had just graduated with a degree in hospitality. I had dreams. I wanted to go to culinary school in Paris. I wanted to learn how to make pastries that looked like art. I had a scholarship lined up. I gave it all up. I remembered the day I told my dad. We were in the kitchen. He was holding his head in his hands. "I'll help," I said. "I'll pay the loan on the house. I'll get a job. I'll fix it." He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "You're a good girl, Mia. You're the only one who can save us. You're the strong one." Those words became my prison, the strong one. The loan payment was $3,850 a month. Do you know how hard it is to make $3,850 a month in extra cash after you pay for your own rent and food? It is suffocating. For 5 years, on the first of every month, I transferred that money, $3,850. That number ruled my life. I walked to work to save bus fare. I taped up my work shoes when the soles split because new shoes meant $50 less for the loan. I never went out to eat. I never went to movies. I didn't date because who wants to date a girl who is always working and has $0 to her name? My friends from college stopped calling years ago. They were getting married, buying condos, going on trips to Mexico. I saw their photos on Instagram sometimes. They looked happy. They looked rested. I looked 10 years older than I was. I had dark circles under my eyes that never went away. My hair was always in a messy bun because I couldn't afford a cut or color. I was 27, but I felt 50. I looked at the phone again. A glorified servant. That's what he said. I thought about the last time I visited them. It was Thanksgiving 3 weeks ago. I took the bus out to the suburbs. It took 2 hours. When I walked in, the house was warm. It smelled like roasting turkey and sage. The fireplace was crackling. Shelby was wearing a new cashmere sweater. She showed me her new boots. "Look, Mia, aren't they cute? Dad got them for me for fall vibes." My mom was setting the table with the good crystal. "Oh, Mia, you're here," she said, barely looking up. "Can you check the gravy? It's lumpy, and the trash needs to go out." I didn't even take my coat off before I was working. I fixed the gravy. I took out the trash. I washed the pots. I set the places. When we sat down to eat, Dad made a toast. "To family," he said, raising his glass of expensive red wine. "To getting through the hard times together." He smiled at everyone. He smiled at Shelby. He smiled at Mom. He glanced at me and nodded, then went back to eating. I waited. I always waited for the specific words. "Thank you, Mia. We couldn't live in this house without you, Mia. We appreciate your sacrifice, Mia." But they never came. Shelby talked about her TikTok following. She was an influencer now. She made videos about lifestyle and fashion. She lived in the house rent-free. She didn't pay for groceries. She didn't pay for utilities. "I need a new ring light," Shelby said during dessert. "The lighting in my room is bad." "We'll look at it this weekend, honey," Mom said. I sat there, chewing my dry turkey. My shoes were wet from the snow because I had holes in them. My bank account had $42 in it because I had just sent the transfer. "Dad," I said quietly, "my rent went up. It's going to be tight next month." The table went silent. The warmth evaporated. Dad put his fork down. He looked annoyed. "Mia, please, not at dinner. We are trying to have a nice time." "I know," I said. "I just wanted you to know." "We all have to make sacrifices," Mom said, sipping her wine. "It's hard for us too, you know. The stress is terrible for your father's blood pressure." I shut my mouth. I felt guilty. I felt selfish for bringing up money. They are struggling, I told myself. I am the strong one. I can handle it. So I went back to the city. I picked up 3 extra shifts. I didn't sleep for 2 days so I could make the money. And now, sitting in the cold, realized it was all a lie. I wasn't the strong one. I was the sucker. I looked around my loft. The walls were bare brick. The floor was concrete. It was ugly and cold, but it was the only place I could afford. Every nice thing I could have had, a couch, a TV, a cat, a warm coat, I had sent to them. I had literally set myself on fire to keep them warm, and they were laughing at the flames. There is a specific kind of training that happens in dysfunctional families. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes years. It's like training a dog. You learn that love is conditional. You learn that peace has a price tag. I wasn't born a servant, I was made one. When I was little, the house was always chaotic. My dad was a dreamer. He had big ideas and big moods. When things were going well, he was the best father in the world. He bought us ice cream, he took us to the zoo, he laughed loud. But when things went bad, and they always went bad, the house turned dark. He would yell. He would throw things. He would sit in the dark for days. Mom would fall apart. She would cry and lock herself in the bedroom. That left me. I was 8 years old the first time I realized I could fix it. Dad was screaming about a bill. Mom was crying. Shelby, who was 3, was wailing in her crib. I went into the kitchen. I made Dad a sandwich. I brought it to him. I didn't say anything. I just put it down and touched his hand. He stopped yelling. He looked at the sandwich. He looked at me. "Thank you, Mia," he whispered. The yelling stopped. The house got quiet. I learned a lesson that day. If I give something, the pain stops. As I got older, the stakes got higher. When I was 12, I did the laundry so Mom wouldn't stress. When I was 15, I helped Shelby with her homework so she wouldn't fail, saving Dad from having to deal with the school. When I was 18, I gave Dad my savings from my summer job to fix the car. Every time I fixed a problem, I got a little crumb of affection, a smile, a good girl, a hug. Those crumbs were addictive. I was starving for them. I thought this was how families worked. Everyone pitches in, right? But that wasn't true. Everyone didn't pitch in. I pitched in. Everyone else took. This created what I call the invisible survivor chain. I was chained to them by my own need to be good. They knew exactly how to pull the chain. If I tried to say no, they used guilt. "After all we did for you," Mom would say. "We raised you, we fed you. Family sticks together." "Do you want us to be on the street?" Dad would ask. "Do you want Shelby to be homeless?" They weaponized my empathy against me. They knew I couldn't sleep at night if I thought they were suffering. But here is the twist I was just beginning to understand. They weren't suffering. They were uncomfortable. There is a difference. They were uncomfortable living within their means. They were uncomfortable not being the rich family in town. They were uncomfortable with consequences. I was the buffer between them and reality. I was the dam holding back the water. And because I held back the water, they never had to learn how to swim. I thought about Shelby. She was 22 now. The same age I was when I took on the debt. She didn't have a job. She dropped out of college after one semester because it was too toxic. She spent her days making videos and shopping online. Why? Because she could. Because Mia paid the mortgage. Because Mia paid the electric bill. Because Mia made sure the internet stayed on so she could upload her videos. I had enabled her helplessness. I sat in the dark and felt a heavy, crushing weight on my chest. It wasn't just the betrayal of the money. It was the betrayal of my identity. I had built my entire sense of self around being the helper. I was the reliable one. I was the savior. If I wasn't saving them, who was I? If I stopped paying, would they still love me? The video answered that question. She's just a glorified servant. They didn't love me. They loved what I did for them. There is a terrible grief in realizing your parents don't actually see you. They see a resource. They see an ATM. They see a mule to carry their burdens. I looked at the video thumbnail again, my father's face. He looked happy. He looked relaxed. He looked relaxed because he didn't have to carry the weight. I was carrying it for him, and he was mocking me for the limp caused by the load. I felt something snap inside me. It wasn't a loud snap. It was quiet. It was the sound of a very old, very rusty chain finally breaking. I stood up. My legs were stiff from the cold. I wasn't going to be the fixer anymore. I wasn't going to be the servant. I walked to the small table where I kept my laptop. I opened it. The screen glowed blue in the dark room. It was time to look at the numbers. I logged into my bank account. The balance was $42.50. I stared at it. That was all I had to my name until my next paycheck in 3 days. I had to make that last for food and bus fare. I clicked on the Transfers tab. There it was, the recurring monthly payment. To Dad Hearth Loan Act amount, $3,850 date, Dec 1st. Status complete. I hovered my mouse over the Cancel Recurring Payment button. My heart was hammering in my chest. My hands were sweating. It felt illegal. It felt dangerous. A voice in my head screamed, "If you do this, they will lose the house. It will be your fault." That was the conditioning speaking. The training. I took a deep breath. I thought of the laughter in the video. I clicked. "Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring transfer?" I clicked yes. Recurring transfer canceled. I sat back, exhaling a breath I didn't know I was holding. I expected the world to end. I expected the roof to cave in. Nothing happened. The wind just kept howling outside. But something kept nagging me. In the video, my dad said, "She's paying off a dead business." But he also said, "Mia thinks she's buying a seat at this table." There was a confidence in his voice that bothered me. If he was so desperate for money, why was he drinking expensive wine? Why was he so relaxed? If the restaurant failed 5 years ago, and the loan was for a fixed amount, I tried to remember the paperwork. I never saw the actual loan documents. Dad just told me the account number to send the money to. He said it was a direct deposit into the loan account to ensure the bank gets it on time. I had the account number saved in my banking profile. I picked up my phone. It was 1 a.m. I dialed the bank's 24-hour automated service line. "Welcome to First City Bank," the robotic voice said. "For account information, press 1. I pressed 1. "Please enter the account number." I typed in the number I had been sending money to for 5 years. "Please enter the last 4 digits of the Social Security number associated with the account." I paused. I typed in my dad's last 4 digits. I knew them by heart because I filled out so many forms for him. "Access granted," the voice said. My stomach dropped. He hadn't even changed the PIN or security settings. He was that arrogant or that lazy. "Current balance," the voice said. I waited for it to say a negative number. I waited to hear how much was still owed. "Current balance, $23,100.00." I frowned. That didn't make sense. If it was a loan account, the balance should be what is owed, usually stated as a debt, or 0 if it's paid. "Last transaction," the voice continued. "Deposit, December 1st, $3,850. "Transaction history," I said clearly. "Loan payoff date," the voice said unexpectedly. "June 15th of this year." I froze. I pressed the phone harder against my ear. "Repeat." "Loan payoff complete, June 15th. June, it was December. The loan had been paid off 6 months ago. The world tilted on its axis. I grabbed a piece of paper and a pen. I started doing the math. June, July, August. September, October, November, December, that was 6 months, 6 payments. 6 payments of $3,850, $23,100. I looked at the number on the paper. The money in that account, the $23,100 was sitting there. It wasn't going to the bank. The bank had already been paid. My father had paid off the house loan in June, but he didn't tell me. He let me keep sending the money. He let me work double shifts in the summer heat. He let me walk in the rain in October. He let me freeze in December. He took the money, and he didn't use it to survive. He used it to live the high life. The wine, Shelby's boots, the expensive turkey he was stealing from me. It wasn't just neglect anymore. It wasn't just emotional abuse. It was theft. I thought about the last 6 months. In July, my wisdom tooth got infected. I needed it pulled. It cost $600. I didn't have the money. I called Mom crying, asking for help. She said, "Oh honey, you know things are tight with the house. Put some clove oil on it." I suffered for 3 weeks until I saved enough to go to a cheap clinic. They had the money. They had my money sitting in an account while I was in agony. In September, my landlord raised the rent. I panicked. I ate plain rice for 2 weeks to make up the difference. They had the money. In November, I got the flu. I missed 3 days of work. I was terrified I wouldn't make the loan payment. I sold my winter coat, my good, warm North Face coat that I bought at a thrift store, to make sure I had the full $3,850. I walked around in a denim jacket for a month until I could afford a cheap replacement. They had the money. They watched me suffer. They watched me starve. They watched me freeze, and they laughed about it. I felt a cold rage spreading through my chest. It was colder than the air in the loft. It was a calm, deadly cold. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was done. I looked at the laptop screen. The transfer was canceled. The ATM was closed. I wondered how long it would take them to notice. I didn't have to wait long to find out. The next morning, I woke up, but I didn't get out of bed immediately. I stared at the ceiling. For the first time in 5 years, I didn't feel the crushing pressure of the debt. The debt was gone. I had breakfast. I actually made eggs and toast. Usually, I skipped breakfast to save 50 cents. But today I ate. I felt stronger. I went to work. I moved through the kitchen with a strange new energy. I wasn't just the tired girl in the corner anymore. I was a person who knew a secret. My phone stayed in my locker. When I checked it at my break at 2 p.m., the screen was lit up with notifications. It had begun. The first text was from my mother. It came at 10 a.m. "Mom. Good morning, sweetie. Just checking in. Hope you are having a lovely day." I stared at it. "Sweetie." She never called me sweetie unless she wanted something. It was the pre-ask sweetness, the grease before the squeeze. Then at 11:30 a.m., a text from Dad. "Dad, Mia, bank called, said the transfer didn't go through. Check it, direct, demanding, no hello, no how are you, just the order." At 12 p.m., another one from Dad. "Dad, Mia, answer me. The account is showing nothing pending. Fix this today." At 12:45 p.m., Shelby joined in. "Shelby, hey, Dad's freaking out. Did you forget? Also, can you send me $50? I need to put a deposit down for this influencer trip to Tulum. It's going to be huge for my brand." I laughed out loud in the break room, a dry, harsh laugh. Tulum. She wanted to go to Tulum, with my money. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't ask why the payment stopped. She just worried about her trip. I put the phone back in my locker and went back to work. By the time I finished my shift at 5 p.m., I had 12 missed calls. 4 from Dad, 3 from Mom, 5 from Shelby. And then the flying monkeys arrived. In psychology, flying monkeys are the people the narcissist sends to do their bidding. I had a text from my Aunt Linda. "Aunt Linda. Mia, your mother called me in tears. She says you're cutting them off. After everything they did for you, you need to be the bigger person, Mia. Don't hold grudges. Family is everything." They were spinning the narrative already. I was the villain. I was the cruel daughter abandoning her poor, struggling parents. I walked home. It was snowing. The wind whipped my face, but I didn't mind it as much today. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Dad calling again. I stopped on the sidewalk. People pushed past me, heads down against the snow. I looked at the phone. If I answered, he would yell. He would scream. He would demand. He would try to pull the chain. But the chain was broken. I let it ring. I imagined them in that big, warm house. They were probably in the kitchen. Dad was probably pacing, red-faced. Mom was probably wringing her hands, worried about her image. Shelby was probably pouting because her trip was in danger. They weren't worried about me. They weren't thinking, is Mia sick? Is Mia hurt? Did Mia lose her job? Is Mia okay? No, they were thinking, where is our money? They were like a parasite when the host body finally stops feeding it. They were panicking because their survival depended on my destruction. I walked the rest of the way home. When I got to my building, I saw a car parked illegally in the loading zone. It was a silver Mercedes. My stomach tightened. I knew that car. It was my father's car. They hadn't just called. They had driven 45 minutes into the city. They were here. They were at my door. I took a deep breath. The old Mia would have run away. The old Mia would have apologized. The old Mia would have fixed it. But the old Mia was gone. She died the moment she saw that video. I walked toward the building. I wasn't going to hide. I was going to face them, and I was going to enjoy it. I stood on the sidewalk, the snow crunching under my worn-out boots. The silver Mercedes looked like a spaceship landed in a junkyard. It was pristine, polished, and out of place against the backdrop of cracked pavement and gray slush. My father was standing by the intercom of my building. He was wearing his camel hair coat and a scarf that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He was jamming his finger against the buzzer for my apartment, over and over again. Shelby was waiting by the car door, shivering in a cropped jacket that was fashionable but useless against a Chicago winter. She looked bored. She was scrolling on her phone, the blue light illuminating her perfectly done makeup. They looked like tourists visiting a zoo. I took a breath. The air was sharp in my lungs. I walked forward. "Dad," I said. My voice was low, but in the quiet street it carried. He spun around. His face was red. I told myself it was the cold, but I knew better. It was rage. "Mia," he barked. He marched toward me, his expensive leather shoes slipping slightly on the ice. "Where have you been? We've been freezing out here for 20 minutes. You didn't answer your phone." He didn't hug me. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't notice that my coat was thin or that I looked exhausted. He just invaded my space. He got right in my face, smelling of expensive cologne and old wine. "The bank transfer," he said, skipping any pleasantries. "It didn't go through. I called the bank. They said you canceled it." "What is this, Mia? Some kind of sick joke? Do you know what day it is? It's the 12th. We are late." Shelby looked up from her phone. "Yeah, Mia, seriously, I can't book my flights until the deposit clears. You're ruining everything." I looked at them, really looked at them. For years, I saw them as giants. I saw them as authority figures I had to please. I saw them as fragile porcelain dolls I had to protect. But standing there in the snow, they didn't look like giants. They looked like addicts. They were junkies and I was their dealer, and I had just cut off the supply. "I know I canceled it," I said. My voice was steady. It surprised me. Dad stopped. He blinked like he hadn't heard me correctly. "Excuse me. I canceled the transfer," I repeated, "and I'm not restarting it." His face changed. The confusion turned into a dark, ugly scowl. "What are you talking about? You know the deal, Mia. You pay the loan. That was the agreement. We can't lose the house. Do you want your mother on the street? Is that what you want?" He reached for the old weapon, the guilt. He swung it like a club. "The loan," I said, "is paid off." The silence that followed was heavy. The wind whistled between the buildings. Dad's eyes darted to the side, a micro-expression of panic. Then he covered it up with bluster. "Don't be stupid. You don't know what you're talking about. Interest rates, penalties. You don't understand finance, Mia. You just cook food." "I called the bank," I said. I kept my hands in my pockets so he wouldn't see them shaking. "I used the automated system. The balance is 0. It was paid off on June 15th. I took a step closer to him. "Where has my money been going since June, Dad?" He stepped back. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes, not fear of losing the house, fear of being caught. "You're confused," he stammered. "There are maintenance fees, taxes, insurance. The house has overhead, Mia. You lived there for 18 years. You owe us." "I owe you?" I asked. I felt a laugh bubbling up, but it wasn't a happy laugh. "I paid $23,100 into an account that was already at 0. You stole $23,000 from me." Shelby stepped forward. "Oh my God, Mia, stop being so dramatic. It's family money. It all goes to the same pot. Why are you being so greedy?" "Greedy?" I looked at her. "Shelby, look at my shoes." She looked down. My boots were split at the toe. Gray wool socks were poking through, wet with slush. "I walk to work because I can't afford the bus," I said. "I eat leftovers. I live in an attic. And you're standing there in $300 boots calling me greedy." "We have a standard of living to maintain," Dad shouted. He was losing control. We are the pillars of this community. We can't live like this. He gestured at my building with disgust. You should be honored to help us maintain the family legacy. The legacy is a lie, I said. And I saw the video, Dad froze. What video? The one you sent me last night, accompanying the file, you and Shelby, laughing, calling me a glorified servant. Dad's face went pale. He patted his pockets, pulling out his phone. He must have realized his mistake then. He must have realized he attached the wrong file or recorded it by accident. Mia, his voice changed instantly. It went from aggressive to wheedling, soft, manipulative. Mia, honey, you misunderstood. We were joking. It was out of context. You know how we joke. I know exactly how you joke, I said. You joke about the people you use. I turned around and walked toward the door of my building. Mia, he yelled. Mia, you get back here. If you walk through that door, don't bother coming to Christmas. Don't bother coming home. I stopped. I put my key in the lock. I'm not coming home, I said, not looking back. I'm already there. I opened the heavy metal door, stepped inside, and let it slam shut. The lock clicked. I stood in the dim hallway, leaning my forehead against the cool metal. Outside, I heard him pounding on the door. I heard Shelby screaming that I was a selfish bitch. I slid down the door until I was sitting on the dirty floor. I wrapped my arms around my knees. I waited for the tears. But they didn't come. Instead, I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was light. It was airy. For the first time in 5 years, I could breathe. I didn't turn on the lights when I got upstairs. I didn't need to. The streetlights outside cast a yellow glow across my apartment. I made myself a cup of tea. I used the last tea bag. I held the warm mug in my hands, letting the heat seep into my frozen fingers. I sat down at my laptop. My father thought the conversation was over. He thought he could yell at my door, scare me, and then I would eventually cave. He thought I would send the money tomorrow out of guilt. He didn't know about the ledger. I opened a new spreadsheet. I am a sous chef. I live my life by organization. Mise en place, everything in its place. You can't run a kitchen if you're messy. You can't cook if you don't know your ingredients. I was going to cook my family. I titled the spreadsheet THE Theft. Column A, date. Column B, amount sent. Column C, loan status. Column D, where the money went, estimated. I went through my bank statements. I logged every single transfer from June 15th to December 1st. June 15th, loan paid. July 1st, I sent $3,850. Dad bought a new grill, saw it on Facebook. August 1st, I sent $3,850. Mom went to a spa weekend, saw it on Instagram. September 1st, I sent $3,850. Shelby bought a designer handbag, TikTok unboxing video. I matched every payment I made to a luxury they enjoyed while I was starving. The total at the bottom of the column was staring at me, $23,100. Then I opened my email. I composed a new message. Subject, the truth about the hearth loan and Mia's status. I added the recipients. I didn't just add my parents. I added everyone. My Uncle Bob, Dad's brother, who was a strict accountant and hated dishonesty. My Aunt Linda, the flying monkey. My grandmother, who always praised Dad for being such a good provider. My cousins. The entire extended family circle. I typed, Dear family, for the last 5 years, I have paid $3,850 a month to cover the loan on my parents' house after the restaurant failed. I was told this was necessary to keep the family from becoming homeless. I have recently discovered that the loan was paid off in full on June 15th of this year. However, my parents continued to demand and accept my payments for 6 more months. They told me the bank would foreclose if I didn't pay. During this time, I struggled to buy food and heat my apartment, believing I was saving my family. Attached is the bank statement proving the loan payoff date. Attached is the record of the $23,100 they stole from me after the debt was cleared. And attached is a video Dad sent me by accident, explaining how he really feels about my sacrifice. I will no longer be attending family events. I will no longer be sending money. Please do not contact me unless it is to arrange repayment of the stolen funds. Sincerely, Mia. I attached the files. The PDF of the bank statement, the spreadsheet, and the video file. My finger hovered over the send button. I knew what this would do. This wasn't just a breakup. This was a nuclear bomb. It would destroy my father's reputation. Uncle Bob had loaned Dad money too. If he knew Dad was scamming his own daughter, Bob would go ballistic. Grandma would be ashamed. It was the nuclear option. But then I remembered the cold nights. I remembered the hunger pains. I remembered the video, glorified servant. I clicked send. Whoosh, the email was gone. I sat back in my chair. The room was silent. I closed my laptop. I went to my small kitchenette. I opened a can of soup. I heated it up. I ate it standing up, looking out the window at the Chicago skyline. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up. Then again, then again. Then it started buzzing continuously. It wasn't my parents this time. It was Uncle Bob. Uncle Bob, Mia. Call me immediately. Is this true? It was my cousin Sarah. Sarah, holy SHT Mia. I just watched the video. I am so sorry. It was Grandma. Grandma, I am shaking. I am calling your father now. I watched the notifications roll in like credits on a movie. The silence was broken. The truth was out. The invisible chain didn't just break. I had melted it down and forged it into a sword. I turned my phone on Do Not Disturb. I finished my soup. It was the best soup I had ever tasted. The next 2 weeks were a blur of chaos, but for the first time, the chaos wasn't happening to me. I was watching it from a safe distance, like watching a demolition derby from the grandstands. My father's empire of lies collapsed faster than I expected. It turns out, I wasn't the only one he was lying to. Uncle Bob had been investing in my dad's new business ideas for years. When he saw my email, specifically, the part about the loan being paid off while Dad pleaded poverty, he hired a forensic accountant. He found out Dad had been skimming money from everyone. He was moving money between accounts, robbing Peter to pay Paul, and using me as the steady cash flow to cover the gaps. The fallout was financial and social. Because I had sent the email to the whole family, Dad couldn't spin the story. He couldn't say I was crazy or ungrateful, because the evidence was right there in black and white. The video was the nail in the coffin. No one could defend a father laughing about using his daughter as a servant. Aunt Linda, the flying monkey, tried to text me once. Aunt Linda, you shouldn't have aired dirty laundry in public. You embarrassed him. I blocked her. I didn't have space for enablers anymore. Then came the legal part. I didn't want to sue them. I didn't want to see them in court. I just wanted my life back. But Uncle Bob advised me to be firm. They owe you that money, Mia, he told me over the phone. That is theft. If you don't demand it back, you are telling them it was okay. So, I sent a formal demand letter. I didn't hire a lawyer, I just used a template online. Demand for repayment, $23,100, due within 90 days. My mother called me 3 days after the email. I finally answered. Mia, she sounded old. Her voice was trembling. Your father, he's in a bad way. Uncle Bob is threatening to sue him. Everyone is ignoring us. I'm sorry to hear that, I said calmly. We don't have the money, Mia, she cried. We spent it. It's gone. How can you ask for it back? You know we don't have it. You have a house, I said. You have 2 cars. You have a closet full of designer clothes. Shelby has a room full of electronics. You want us to sell our things? She sounded horrified. I sold my coat when I had the flu, Mom, I said. I sold my coat so I could send you money. Yes, I want you to sell your things. There was silence on the line, then a click. She hung up, but they did it. They had no choice. Uncle Bob was pressuring them, and the shame of the family knowing what they did was too much. They needed to make it right to save face. 2 weeks later, Shelby posted a closet sale on her Instagram. She was crying in the video, saying she was downsizing for a minimalist lifestyle. She sold her handbags. She sold the boots. She sold the camera gear. Dad sold the Mercedes. I heard from my cousin that he was driving a 10-year-old Honda now. They listed the house for sale. It was too big for them anyway, without my monthly subsidy. It was a slow, painful dismantling of the life they had built on my back. And the amazing thing was, they survived. They didn't die. They didn't end up on the street. They just had to live like normal people. They had to budget. They had to experience consequences. I stopped feeling guilty. I realized that by protecting them for so long, I had actually hurt them. I had let them live in a fantasy. Now they were finally living in the real world. I went to work every day. I cooked. I laughed with my coworkers. I started keeping my paychecks. The first time I saw my bank account balance go up instead of down at the end of the month, I almost cried. $1,200, $2,400, $3,600. The money piled up. It was security. It was freedom. I didn't hear from Shelby for a month. Then I saw a post on her social media. She had gotten a job as a receptionist at a salon. She looked miserable in the photo, but she was working. I smiled. Good for you, Shelby. Welcome to the world. 6 months passed. It was June again. The weather in Chicago was beautiful. The lake was blue, the trees were green, and the city felt alive. I was no longer living in the freezing loft. With the money I saved, and the repayment checks that started arriving from my parents, I moved. I rented a studio apartment in a nice neighborhood. It wasn't huge, but it had a real bedroom. It had big windows that sealed shut. It had a dishwasher, and it had a modern oven. I stood in my new kitchen, kneading dough. I was making brioche. The smell of yeast and butter filled the air. It was the smell of happiness. My phone rang. It was a notification from my bank. Deposit received, $3,850 from Dad. It was the final payment. They had paid me back, every cent of the $23,100. I wiped my floury hands on my apron and stared at the screen. It was over. The ledger was balanced. I didn't feel a surge of triumph. I didn't feel the need to call them and gloat. I just felt peace, a quiet, steady hum of peace. I took that money and moved it into a separate savings account I had opened. I named the account Paris. I had reapplied to the culinary school. I sent them my portfolio. I told them my story, not the sad version, but the strong version. The version about a woman who knows how to work 18 hours a day and still produce excellence. I had been accepted for the fall semester. In 2 months, I would be on a plane. I walked over to my new couch, a soft, velvet sofa that I bought brand new. I sat down and looked around my space. There were no ghosts here. There were no obligations. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my dad. It was the first time he had texted me directly in months. Dad, final payment sent. We are square. Mom asks if you are coming for the 4th of July barbecue. I looked at the message. They still didn't get it. They thought this was just a transaction. They thought that once the money was paid, access would be restored. They thought they could buy me back. But I wasn't for sale. I didn't hate them. Hate takes too much energy. I just outgrew them. I had evolved past the need for their validation. I typed a reply. Mia, I received the payment. Thank you. I won't be coming to the barbecue. I'm busy preparing for my move to France. I wish you both the best. I hit send. Then I blocked the number. I didn't do it out of anger. I did it because I needed to protect my peace. My future was waiting for me and I couldn't carry any heavy luggage with me. I went back to the dough. I punched it down, folded it over and shaped it. It was resilient. It sprang back when I touched it. I smiled. I was just like the dough. I had been punched down, kneaded and stretched. But I had risen. And now I was going to become something wonderful. I'm telling you this story not because I want your pity. I don't need it. I'm telling you this because I know there are people out there right now who are freezing to keep others warm. If you are the one always fixing the problems you didn't create. If you are the one paying debts that aren't yours. If you are the one waiting for a thank you that never comes. Please listen to me. You are not a bad person for saying no. You are not selfish for choosing your own survival. You are not a servant. Family is supposed to be a safe harbor, not an anchor that drowns you. Check your ledgers. Look at the cost, not just the money but the emotional cost. Is it worth it? You have the power to walk away. You have the power to break the chain. It will be scary. They will scream. They will call you names. Let them, because on the other side of that door is your life. And it is beautiful. I'm Mia. I'm a chef. I'm a survivor. And for the first time in my life, I am free. Thank you for listening to my story. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps us share these stories with people who need to hear them. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to cut off a family member to save yourself? I want to hear your story. Stay strong. Choose yourself.